All right.
All right, we're live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Vermont Legislature's House Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife. This afternoon, we are going to start testimony with Rebecca Schwartz, an artist who's been working on community engagement around the reduction of plastic pollution in the environment. Welcome, Ms. Schwartz. You're muted.
Sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much for having me. I really appreciate your time. And if it's okay, I can share my screen to show you some slides of images that I've been working on, the artwork, if that's interesting to you all.
That is interesting, and I hope you'll also be able to just explain to the committee what you have been up to since we first communicated in the summer. And
yeah,
great, good.
Yeah,
sure,
I'll try to weave that in, but please, anything else?
Great, yeah. So you can share screen now.
Okay, super. So while I'm getting that screen set up, I don't think I'll be able to see you all when I'm presenting. So please interrupt me at any point and ask questions or anything if there's any issues. Let's see. So are you seeing like a wooded lane?
We are.
All right, great. So I am Rebecca Schwartz. I live in Burlington, Vermont. I've lived in Vermont for 18 years and I grew up in a lush suburb of New York. So that's what you're seeing here, playing in some of those magical nooks of nature and making magic potions, exploring the many growing things and gathering and engineering huge piles of leaves and snow. And I'm sure you can all relate to some of those magical experiences of nature and childhood, which perhaps is what brings you to serve in this committee. So this is an image of a giant art petition that I started over the summer and connected with Representative Sheldon about how to do something about plastics. I had been making art with post-consumer plastics. And then when I learned about some of the legislation, I realized that some of the quiet contemplative art that I had been making this wasn't the moment for that. This is the moment to really speak up and speak out for what's going on. I'm sorry, I don't have an image of the round lights, but I can show you that. I work in art and health, and that's on the individual level, the community level, and in the environmental level. I run an art and health program at UVM Medical Center called Art from the Heart, where volunteers create with patients, family members, etc. So you could imagine being an artist in the pandemic in healthcare has been challenging, but it's taught me that creativity is not finite. Basically, the more you use it, the more creative you are. Of course, if you're burned out, you're burned out, but all other factors being supportive, you can just keep going and going. So this is that same petition with the addition of some fish made by students from Essex High School who will hopefully swim those fish like in a dance movement up to you all at the State House as a way to have their voices heard as well about the serious problem that plastics present to us. And I really appreciate all of you for your bold vision to lead and make positive change for your constituents in the state of Vermont. So thank you, truly. So what I'm showing you now is really mostly not art made by me. This is mostly art made by other people who have participated in workshops that I've been running about artivism, so combining art and activism in support of making change around plastics and giving people that space to process what is happening in the world with pollution and toxins and plastics. So the art I'm going to show you is filled with these sorrows, with fears, with anger, and I think the arts can help us process that and hold conflicting ideas at the same time. And they can also express love and creative spark and bold and playful visioning. So we're all artists, just some of us identify that way and some of us don't. But here we have a couple pieces. This one's made by a UVM student, and this is made by a 12-year-old at the time, a Burlington resident, Bellamy. So you can see just that love and that expression of how heartbroken it feels to be in crisis and feel like you need saving. And I have a little video of this young woman explaining her piece, but this top part flaps back and literally seems to break in half. And, you know, the arts can help us through what, as Greta Thunberg says, the blah, blah, blah of a world sinking deeper and deeper into climate emergency, while it seems to be doing nothing to shift. And I know you all are working hard to change that. But we know that we have a big issue, many big interconnected issues ahead of us. And so, you know, this grief, sorrow, fear, anger, feeling stuck. So here it is expressed in this, I think that's the Cheetos guy. I used to be real and now I'm a bag. So it doesn't have to be like a big complicated art piece to be pretty full of some punch. And we are creative creatures, and we're creative animals, always creating and imagining. And we're fully capable of bold action for visionary systemic changes. And as an artist, thinking about how to make systemic change is what led me to point my art to facilitating other people's art and helping give them a venue to express their concerns. And steadily, hopefully we can progress and improve the systems we have. So we want that huge those visionary leaps, and of course, steady progress. So I really hope the Senate moves that modernized bottle bill through and then keeps going with all sorts of other forms of extended producer responsibility. So this one I did make. This is a light that's been kicking around my studio for a while. And these are actually made out of school lunch milk bottles. I gathered those some time ago, so I'm not sure if they're still using this, but it just makes me pretty crazy to see, you know, why don't we have refill and reuse systems? And I wish we would have quotas or goals to get to. And actually, this was sort of a happy art accident. Instead of saying make producers pay, it was sort of awkward to get my hand in there. It ended up looking more like day. And then I realized, oh, it's like a poem. So instead of making producers day, let's make them pay. And, you know, there's so many aspects of the work you all are doing in various parts, right? Like weatherization for low-income Vermonters and working on honest, clean electricity. The more I learn about where we're at as a state, the more I see the potential for how we can really do much better. So in all of these dimensions of our polluting and toxic systems, I'm so glad that you'll be taking up H115 later today to talk about household hazardous waste. That's great. This talks about some of the issues with plastic. So plastic production will triple by 2050. And it's in our bodies. Plastic is in our bodies and everywhere. We're breathing it, we're consuming it. They say, recent study came out that we're consuming a credit card worth of plastic each, is it week or month? Either way, it's an alarming number. And also plastics is often cleaned up at the public's expense, right? So where is it going? And oftentimes it's being produced, most plastic is produced in communities of color, primarily in Black communities in Louisiana, which in a part of the state that's now known as Cancer Alley. And then it's ending up overseas, a lot of it. I certainly hope ours is not, but I worry it's either there or in our one landfill that is filling up that I hear is 40% single-use packaging. And it's toxic. It's toxic where it's made. It's toxic where it's used. That's in all of our homes. And it's shown to be connected with cancer and kidney issues and all sorts of things that you're probably aware of. So this is me trying to grapple with that. And oops, sorry about that. So in this process of making this giant art petition, I thought, well, how can I bring it to you all? So I held an event on January 8th where around 45 people gathered, and we made like the waters rising, as if the waters were rising up over the State House. And that was the plan for the Climate SOS rally today, but we got iced and snowed out. So expect to see us sometime soon to make visible the issues that we're all facing. Hopefully raise awareness so that you all have support from all of your constituents to make dramatic change happen. Because we need that radical systemic change, because the materials we consume, they're making us sick, and we don't have 4 earths to eat up. So there's quite a few pieces here. You've already seen this one. This is a creature by Sabina Forg, who, sorry about that, is a UVM student. This is a seabird made out of plastic foam packaging by Evie Cundiff from Burlington. This is by another UVM student. And this wave is by me. So I love that this creature, he's got a little tag that says, "Hold big producers responsible, please," smiley face. And here's the poster for the event that will happen at some point, yet to be determined. I would love to see the climate emergency treated with the weight that the coronavirus emergency has been. You know, I'd love to see weekly press conferences or monthly press conferences. Let's keep this front and center, and keep that love present in our worlds. And I'll leave you with these last 2 images. This is just to create energy for you all, to know that you have support of people wanting to see real and dramatic change, based on the many people I worked with. On that petition, there's over 330 signatures on the physical petition, and then 50 signatures on an online version. And then I have paper copies that a friend and art colleague has been getting signatures on. So I think we'll be closing in somewhere probably over 400 signatories to the petition, which is in support of modernizing the bottle bill, extended producer responsibility, and the right to repair. So I hope you all really run with the extended producer responsibility. And first, I hope your colleagues really just pass that bottle bill and build on what we know is working without getting distracted by wishing for bigger and better things that maybe industry is a little bit too capable at manipulating. So that is that. So hopefully my timing has been acceptable, and if there's time for questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thank you for sharing your art with us. Do members have any questions? It is 1:15 and we have witnesses waiting, so quickly.
Only that if you would submit those to our website, your slideshow. I know there are people who want to see that didn't get to.
Happily.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Spectacular.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for your work. Bye.
Bye. Okay, with that committee, we will shift gears to H115, and first witness there is Trevor Barton, Executive Director of Municipal Waste Association. Welcome, Mr. Barton.
Well, thank you, and I'm pleased to see everybody today and get a chance to assist you with Bill H115. I did send a transcript, but I'm been executive director since 2017 after a 30-year career in 2 jurisdictions in municipal waste management. So everything from a household technician to a director and a commissioner at one point as well too. So a varied career, all in waste for 30 years. It's been a ride. The province of Ontario has had producer responsibility legislation for household hazardous waste. That includes paints and solvents, pesticides, herbicides, antifreeze, oil filters, containers, fertilizers, gas cylinders, and batteries. Lead acid batteries and single use since 2008. In many ways, been very successful in helping to develop collection networks and processing facilities. And every year, thousands of metric tons of this hazardous material are diverted from landfills. Much of the materials are recycled into new products, like paint into gray paints, and batteries into fertilizer as they recover the zinc and the other metals. And it's not all. It's been a considerable amount of work since 2008, and we've encountered problems. It hasn't been easy. We've had numerous changes, and in the testimony that I did send to you, I've given a link to the most current document, the regulations. Now it's called Hazardous and Special Products, rather than it used to be MHSW, Municipal, Hazardous, and Special Waste. So just HSP now is how we refer to it. And that just came into force January 1st this year. And a little bit of history and experience. If this is a complicated policy to get right, and luckily for you, Ontario has 2 decades of experience in what worked and what didn't. And then I've mentioned a couple of lessons as well too. One of the biggest issues was in 2010 when the first round we had eco fees attached, or sorry, the Ministry of Environment, the government had eco fees attached to purchases for bleach and detergent and batteries, and it just it caused all sorts of problems. It was a sticker shock. People would purchase it, and then you're paying additional 20 cents for the life of the product, not the packaging, but the disposal of the leftover product. So it was quickly walked back, and there was changes made into the regulation. But one of the things that we have been a proponent of in all across the province is get to your consumers to purchase what you need, use all that material, and do not create hazardous waste at the end of the day. Now there is used motor oil and fuels that are spent fuels and things like that. There is still hazardous waste, and once you use a single-use battery, I mean, it rather than it should be a product stewardship on that as well too. But it's really what I'm trying to give you a couple of lessons. Prescribe the outcomes, not the process, and rather than stipulating the elements of a hazardous waste collection and management system, focus on the outcomes. Statewide collection and target produce should meet and allow companies to freely engage in the market. They, in the province, the stewards that produce the materials that consumers, they're responsible for that product cradle to grave under this, and this, we're talking hazardous waste. So as they purchase a product and at the end of its life or at the end of its use, it becomes a hazardous material, that is dropped off at either hazardous waste days put on by municipalities or depots, to avoid it being dumped down sanitary sewers into the environment or landfilled as well too. So we have properly trained staff that receive this, largely at our landfills and depots. That's where the hazardous waste, and in addition, they're collecting single-use batteries, waste electronics, in addition to hazardous waste, just because it's one drop-off site. In some jurisdictions, they have event days where the residents bring their hazardous waste, and we have contracted hazardous waste management companies that collect and package the material safely that can be shipped down to processors for proper disposal or recovery and recycling. It depends on what the material is. But one of the other points, ensure that definitions and regulations set a level playing field for all producers. The definitions of producer and supplier have evolved over the years. One of the unique things for us is, of course, e-commerce, which we didn't anticipate the magnitude of it, especially during COVID recently, that people are able to purchase cleaning products and batteries and just everything. Is it first importer? It's really hard. Who is the, is it the Amazons of this world that is the producer of the product, or is it the Procter and Gamble? So we've got we can determine who produces the product that enters the marketplace within Ontario, and that's where that legislation covers anything you produce. You're responsible for the disposal of the product at the end of its life. And I talked already about the eco fees. Some of the costs, it was really, the problems we had were rush policy, and we didn't include the retailers. And my association, we worked to help get the legislation drafted. We anticipated there would be issues, but we sort of missed that as well too. The pushback even surprised us as waste management professionals on the municipal side as well too. And we didn't expect that because it wasn't a tax, it's an eco fee, but again, it just increased the cost of a product to properly dispose of it. And that's why, and one of the other things that does work for us when we have a hazardous waste depot, we have a reuse section, because people bring in cans of full paint because they didn't use it. We put it on a shelf after checking it, and some of them are sealed containers as well too. But people sign a waiver and they can pick up that material for free and go and use it. Now they sign a waiver because it's a frozen can of paint that's thawed and you use it and it chips. The municipality shouldn't be on the hook because that can of paint froze, and you can't determine if that happens. But there's many things that are picked up at the reuse and reused properly. We also we recommend that if you have leftover paints, try to use it, give it to your neighbors, give it to your family, or just use the product so you don't produce hazardous waste at the end of the day. So just drive high targets at what incents innovation and economies of scale, and ensure proper oversight and enforcement. And this would ensures a level playing field that is not only good for corporate citizens, but for paying the cost as well too. I can take questions, and I can provide more elaboration if you like.
Thank you for your testimony. We have a question from Representative Dolan.
Thank you. And thank you for actually your experience. So I think that's informative as we move forward with this bill. My question is about that eco fee. When you said you walked that fee back, did the ministry remove the fee?
Yes. And retailers did as well. It was just an additional fee that was, when you purchase something, it showed up as a cost on your receipt. So that disappeared is the best way. Walk back and remove from the regulation.
And was that fee at the checkout?
Yes, it was.
As you mentioned, it similar to when you have a fee, your rooms and meals tax or something along those lines. You would the consumer actually sees that fee.
That's right. Yeah.
What about if I may, I don't mean to interrupt. Do you have another comment on that?
Oh, it was around 20 cents an item, but it was it depended on how much the size of the product, so it would vary in the cost.
Okay. Now, obviously, when we're managing hazardous waste, household hazardous waste, we're always fearful of the risk that, as you know, some of these materials end up where we don't want them to end up.
Right.
Such as in a landfill where we're trying to manage. In our state, we have one line landfill that's open, or even down a drain, as you mentioned, down a sewer drain. And some of those risks and the fact that we're not addressing it directly creates that externality. Those costs are borne by the citizens who have to pay the cost of cleanup or pay the cost of remediation or management or shipping of that materials. There's this alternatively, there's a concern that if you do it, extended producer responsibility for household hazardous waste, those costs of the producer will transfer those costs onto the consumer, thereby potentially increasing the cost of the product itself. Have you seen that as in your experience as something that perhaps is inhibitive of your capacity to implement this program?
Not at the municipal level, because the material comes to us and we're paid by the stewards to collect and package that material. One of the some producers bury the cost into the product, or it's just a cost of doing business, but it's not a visible fee. And that's some of the political argument. If you were purchasing a product, you as a consumer are now responsible for it because it's yours, but it should go back to the original producer and just the cost of doing business. So yes, it could be buried in the price, but they can't price themselves out of the market as well too. But it's all I can tell you is consumers aren't aware of it, but we promote it's free drop off at any of the depots that are municipally run, and they're considerably busy.
Considerably what? Oh,
May I ask one more question?
sure.
What was the impetus behind Ontario having this extended producer responsibility on household hazardous waste? Why was there a need for this bill?
Well, it was really to get these materials out of landfill. We wanted, and municipalities used to do this on their own dime. This shouldn't be in our water. We shouldn't go through our water pollution control plant or our storm water collection, and also our landfills. We don't want it contaminated with hazardous materials, which we could identify. And then why should ratepayers, the taxpayers, have to pay for this program when it's the producers of these products that make it, and they should be, that's extended producer responsibility. They are responsible for the products they put into the marketplace at the end of their life for disposal. But one of the benefits, and that's where industry is also use the product that you've purchased. But where we see a lot of materials is people just store this stuff, and when somebody passed away and you get their estate and the kids go in and clean up grandpa's, and we're still seeing DDT from the 1950s. I mean, this stuff just comes, but it comes to a proper place for proper management, and that's the key. And have that outreach and education and promotion for your depots, but to get the public involved so they recognize it, so it doesn't go down the drain.
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Representative McCullough has a question.
Our bill sets up a stewardship program for the producers to run in total, with some oversight by our governmental agency. It looks like yours is sort of a combination of that, and you being the government are paid by the stewardship organization to actually collect and dispose?
That is correct. Yes, I work for 444 municipalities as in the association I do, and about 225 of those members have hazardous waste depots, and they are paid by industry by the ton of what they collect, and it's all segregated differently, and so it's manifested, and they have producer responsible organizations or pros that look after all that billing, so that's not a municipal cost again too for administration. Municipalities get a check for the amount of material that they manage that comes through their facilities. So that pays for labor in the buildings and staff.
Right. Had you, prior to to the enactment of this looked at a system like we're proposing, where the stewardship organization actually takes the whole ball and runs with it?
Yeah, we had, but where we ran into, we were thinking the Home Depots of this world would take back that material. They don't want it coming back in. It's an environmental hazard for them to come. They don't have the trained staff. They don't have the spill facility. It was just the safety protocols in place, and it would be quite a big expense. That was where the real barrier. Like, we have Canadian Tires and Home Depot and all these hardware stores that sell all these products, but at the end of their life, they don't want to come back. They're retailers. They are not trained hazardous waste professionals. And that's, now if the industry sets up their own depot network and you've got some return to vendor, that could work, but that certainly is going to need some government oversight. You're going to have inspections, because you would be approving those sites either federally or statewide, and because it has a certain amount of environmental risk, because you want people to bring back the material in the original package as well too, but you won't. As it comes back, you get it in pop bottles or soda bottles, or other containers. It's not in the package that it came when you purchased it. So you have to do a whole bunch of tests, because you've got a potential risk problem as well too. You don't put chlorine with ammonia, or mix kerosene and fertilizer. You just need to have this all separated, because this is material that could cause certainly environmental and human health impact.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm curious, you have 444 municipalities, but have 220 some odd have depots. Did you have a stipulation for how far apart the depots should be, or something driving it, so if people didn't have to go more than a certain distance?
Yeah, it's 20 minute centroids is what if it takes 20 minutes. Now this is, I should explain, there's regional governments and 3 municipalities like Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon. 3 huge towns and cities are within the region. And the region looks after waste management. So 20-minute centroids. So from your home, you can drive to a hazardous waste depot within 20 minutes. And that seems to be the standard. Now, for rural and northern communities, Ontario is a big province. That's why they have event days, and it may be only once or twice a year that they have event days. But again, that would be in the center of the town, and people drive in and they bring their old TV sets and all sorts of other materials. And it's an event day, and I really like the rural ones. They're fun.
Well, it sounds like you're in the right business then. One more question, then we do need to move on.
What happens after they get collected and transported? What does Ontario do with the hazardous waste? Do they try to do source separation, or?
It has to be separated by category, because these are chemical classes and under transport of dangerous goods. So trained hazardous waste technicians, or we have service providers that have trained staff as well too. So you separate your caustics from your explosives and solvents, etc. Lab packed, we call it, or in sealed drums that go to a processor. Now, paints would be alkaloids are separated from latex paints, and they can make a gray colored paint especially with the latex. They can make a fuel from or motor oil is just cleaned and recycled and made into new or other motor oil again after it is cleaned. So that is industry specialized. The hazardous waste industry specializes in that, and some of it is incinerated, like say sharps or needles, because that is part of hazardous waste as well too. Or it will go into incineration or secure landfills, that it's entombed for forever in a secure landfill. And that's run by industry, not municipalities. Don't have landfills like that. I mean, there's specialty approvals from the provincial government.
Thank you so much for your testimony and for joining us this afternoon.
Well, thank you for having me. And I'm open to, if you need further information, just drop me a line.
Great, thank you.
And congratulations to the women's hockey team. See you in 4 years.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. All right.
All right. Next up, we'll go to Carrie Gregere, the Policy Director of Public Health and Ag Resource Management Agency of Agriculture. Welcome back, Mr. Gregere.
Thank you, Chair Sheldon. I'm gonna say it for you one time. It's Carrie Gregere, and it's with the Agency of Agriculture. And I did get a chance to look at H115, and I'm not sure exactly what testimony you're looking at for the agency, so I thought I'd tell you where we are and how we got there with regard to pesticide and pesticide waste. In the mid 80s, 1986, we were collecting waste pesticides under a grant from EPA. It was called the Clean Sweep program. And by the mid 90s, that program ran for about 10 years. And by the mid 90s, that was sort of drying up, and we still wanted to continue collecting waste pesticides. So in the 1998 legislative session, a $5 fee was added to the registration fee for pesticides to create a disposal fund. The agency used to run events on our own, but over the years that sort of morphed into a program where we enter into grant agreements with the solid waste management districts. So if you show up, your household hazardous waste, you get charged to dispose of that, but you dispose of your waste pesticides on our dime. We register about 12,000 pesticides annually. That fee is $275. Of that, $60,000 is generated that goes into the disposal fund. Last year, we granted out $108,000 to the solid waste management districts. And we also did another $45,000 in what we call cleanouts. And that's your last witness just described when a property transfer happens and the new owner finds a shed full of pesticides. Well, think of that happening at an apple orchard or a golf course or a farm. We did 7 of those, including one at a hardware store. Last year, they range in price, and we contract with waste haulers to do that. And they range in price from about $1,000 upwards of $25,000. I wanted to also add that of the roughly 12,000 pesticides that we register annually, nearly 7,500 of those are what we would consider Class C pesticides. We have 3 classes of pesticides in the state. Class A are your restricted use products. C are your homeowner products that you see in a grocery store or a Home Depot. Some of the active ingredients are the same, but the percentages are not. So if you were to walk down a grocery store aisle, your bleach is a registered pesticide, and every different brand is a pesticide product that gets registered. All your disinfectants, your head lice shampoos, your pet products, hand sanitizers, if you will, all of those are registered pesticides, but they fall under the Class C designation. And while I've read through H115, I don't see where it currently applies to pesticides, because there's every area you've called out there's an exemption for pesticide products, whether it's RCRA or our state hazardous waste laws. The Agency of Ag does manage pesticide disposal. It's done either under an MOU or it's a direct exemption from the current hazardous waste law. If you were to include pesticide products, I would suggest that the pesticides designated as Class C are the most appropriate to be included in a stewardship or homeowner hazardous waste type program, even though they already do contribute to our disposal fund. As I said, we are bringing in about 60,000. We sort of tripled that number in expenditures. So an additional funding mechanism such as the one this bill presents might be in order, because we're, like I said, spending about $180,000 and bringing in 60 annually. And I hope that's the information that you were looking for from the agency.
Yeah, although I think I must have written some numbers down. You said wrong. 12,000 pesticides are registered annually. And what is
Yes.
the registration fee for those annually?
$275, and $5 of that registration fee goes into our disposal fund.
Where does the other money go?
It runs the program, it runs our lab, it pays for the field agents, it's operational.
That's the $5 I lost track of, I see.
Mhm.
What, may I ask a question?
Sure.
When was the last time that fee was adjusted?
1999. Oh, the pesticide fee,
Yeah.
registration fee, or the disposal fund registration fee?
Oh, both.
Okay, so the disposal fee was set as $5 in 1999. 2 years ago, as part of the pollinator protection bill that this body passed, that fee was increased.
To $5.
No, not the disposal fee, the pesticide registration fee. I believe it went up $15 total.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. And so
Yeah.
was there consideration to increase the portion that went to disposal?
That wasn't part of the discussion at that time. It was earmarked specifically for pollinator protection.
Right, so other members have questions? Representative McCullough.
Carrie, so as I understand, $5 goes to disposal. Is that the grant money that you make to the swimmies?
It is, yes. But like I said, that $5 per product brings in $60,000 to the agency. And last year, the grant total expenditure was $108,000. So almost double the 60 that we brought in, we paid out in grants.
And the overage that you paid out, if you will, came out of the 270 remaining dollars from those fees. Is that right?
Correct. It came out of what would be known as the pesticide monitoring fund. There's a special fund that's called the pesticide monitoring fund that registration fee gets dumped into.
And I want to either put an exclamation point on this or have you disabuse me of the idea. The agency would support adding Class C pesticides to the CPR bill. Is that accurate to say?
If you are choosing to add pesticides to the bill, I believe Class C pesticides, as designated by the agency, are the appropriate one. class of pesticide to be included in this program. And my thoughts on that are, right now we have grants with the districts, and if this program were to be administered in part by the Agency of Natural Resources, we don't need two state entities making grant applications and reviewing grants for the same entities. It should pretty much all go through one, in my opinion, just for ease of, lessen the clerical burden.
And so now that confuses me a bit, because if we did add Class C to the EPR, you would not be doing grants toward those. They'd be managed by the stewardship organization. So I guess we're still maintaining that separation. Is that right?
So if it, like I said, we're spending about 3 times more than we're bringing in for disposal. I would continue to do the clean outs, if you will, of the barns and sheds containing restricted use pesticides, or golf courses or other ag use pesticides. So the A and B products, we would still be maintaining the authority to dispose of those. The containers that are brought to the districts, I believe, should fall under this program. So we wouldn't, I know there's a transition period in our grants with them go through 2023 currently. They were 5-year grants. But as this sort of program morphed, we don't need to be a player, as long as the household hazardous waste plus pesticides are being collected and managed through the Agency of Natural Resources. As long as some state entity is doing it, it doesn't necessarily need to continue to be the Agency of Ag. And we would use those disposal funds that we do collect to continue to remove the large scale stashes, if you will, of pesticides that are still out in the landscape.
Thank you, Gary. I think I got it now.
Okay, so I just want to, on this one, follow up a little. So currently, your fund covers those larger scale cleanouts.
Yes.
There's no cost to the landowner.
In some instances, we do a cost share. In some instances, we're covering the entire cost.
And what makes you determine which way that goes?
There's an enforcement matrix that we do use, but if somebody is first able to help with the disposal, that's one of the considerations. And also, if it's a business that's collected these products over the last 20 years and just had them stored, we want them disposed of correctly, but it really is that entity's, like you were talking, cradle to grave. It's their responsibility to have them disposed of, but to make sure it's done properly, we'll enter into an assurance of discontinuance, and part of that assurance of discontinuance is that we'll cover half the cost.
Thank you. Representative Lefebvre.
Thanks, Gary. Good to see you.
You too. Been a long time, Paul.
Tell me about the volume of pesticide. Is it remained steady over the years, or is it increasing as far as the disposal goes?
We've sort of looked at those trends. And in terms of the stuff coming out of people's homes, it had been sort of decreasing over the years, but I think with the stay home, stay safe mandate over the course of 2020's spring and summer, I think a lot of people were cleaning out areas that haven't been cleaned out in years. So I don't know if it's COVID related or not. Anecdotally, I can suggest that it was because a lot more people were home, but we did see a large spike in 2020.
Might be relative to the turnover in real estate too.
It very well could be.
That's probably it. That's a good point. Other
Thank you, Terry.
Representative Dolan.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. Our last witness talked about in some of these collections or from stashes, as you mentioned, they've come across DDT, which has been banned from the 1960s. Have we had similar experiences where we've had such dangerous pesticides found in these waste streams?
So when that was the impetus behind EPA's Clean Sweep program that spanned the mid 80s through the 90s. And we did see large volumes of DDT, Silvex, other canceled chemistries, organochlorines, organophosphates. But the amount of those type products is dwindled significantly. And it's rare for us to sort of see those chemistries anymore because this has been in place for almost 30 years.
Thank you. And one other follow-up question. When you had referred to this particular bill, and some of the exemptions where it was exempting the Class C type of chemicals or hazardous substances. I was trying to find that. Do you have and maybe this will be a question for our own legal counsel, but I think the concern was that if it was included in here and too broad, it would end up including some cleaning products that are water soluble and meant to be somewhat used appropriately, and including sometimes being part of flushing things down sinks, for example.
In reading the bill, I couldn't see anywhere where you specifically have included pesticides based on all the exemptions. There's a RCRA exemption from pesticides. Our own state laws exempt pesticides from hazardous waste. There's that VT06 classification, but that only has to do with restricted use pesticides. So I can't see where they're specifically included.
Okay, I couldn't either.
Yeah.
But that will be a follow-up that we'll have with our council.
Representative Dolan, I have to say that I didn't look at the transportation codes. It includes some products that are listed in the AOT's transportation codes, and I didn't track those down. The ones I'm familiar with are the A&R rules and the ag rules in RCRA.
And then how do you sustain the fact that you are money coming in to support this, the management of pesticides is less than the money getting granted out? How is that sustainable? Where's that funding coming from? And are you just meeting all demand, the current demand for assistance?
So we're doing what we can, but we're not meeting it. And there are areas of our budget that we haven't tapped for a little while. Sort of the communication, outreach, and travel portions of that budget haven't been used for 2 years. So we are dumping what we can into the disposal fund.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As I recall, our legislative council thought the transportation codes might be where the pesticides would come up. So it's
Okay.
Maybe if you have a chance to look at it, or we will be looking at that probably.
Yep, I will.
Thank you. Representative McCullough.
Terry, since we last talked a few minutes ago, I'm going, well, if we take Class C pesticides out and have them managed by stewardship, will you still be getting their registration fee?
I would assume, yes. Yep.
Okay, good. Because it would sound to me like we might be creating another cash problem here otherwise. Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your testimony and joining us today.
You're welcome. And if any clarification is needed in sort of what we spoke about as you progress with this bill, feel free to reach out.
Thank you. We may just take you up on that offer.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah.
See you, Carrie.
All right. With that, we will go to John Malter, Administrator of the Mad River Resource Management Alliance. All right, Mr. Malter. You are muted. Is he talking?
Okay. Okay, here I am.
There we go. Nice. Now we can hear you.
I feel so much better not talking to just myself.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Dear Chairman Sheldon, Vice Chairman McCullough, and members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony in support of H115. The Mad River Resource Management Alliance is a solid waste management entity formed by an interlocal agreement for the management of municipal solid waste for the towns of Fayston, Moortown, Waitsfield, Warren, and Waterbury. As with other solid waste management entities, we're required by our solid waste implementation plan to hold a minimum of 2 household hazardous waste collection events that are convenient to our residents if we do not have a permanent collection facility. There are no permanent household hazardous waste facilities in the Mad River Resource Management Alliance. The cost for our collection events has been ramping up nearly every year as a result of household hazardous waste contractor rate increases and an increasing awareness on the part of our residents to do the right thing and properly dispose of their toxic and otherwise household products and residues. Our price for disposal of household hazardous waste from 2018 through 2021 has ranged from $739 a ton to $1,913 a ton in 2021. We have recently contracted with a new household hazardous waste collector for the period 2022 through 2025, and based on their setup fees, a collection of similar amounts of material coming from our residents and small businesses, their environmental insurance and security fees, which are a total of 13% across their invoices, I anticipate that our costs are going to rise by over 40% per event over what we paid in our last contract. In order for our household hazardous waste collection program to be sustainable, we need to implement the extended producer responsibility with stewardship program that's envisioned in H115. The cost should be borne by the manufacturers of the products that become the household hazardous waste. The solid waste management entities should be providing education on the proper management of these fees and assist in, being able to collect the materials. The expanded extended producer responsibility programs on architectural paints, batteries, electronic waste, mercury thermostats, and fluorescent lamps and bulbs have led the way in environmental stewardship. We appreciate your efforts on continuing in this manner, and I'm happy to take any questions concerning this. I've been involved in this program for 25 years now, and I've been dealing with hazardous waste since the beginning of the glacial period.
All right.
It's
Thank
good
you
to-
for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Do members have questions for Mr. Malter?
I have a quick question.
Representative LaFave.
Thank you for your testimony, Walter, sorry, John. But did I get that right? From 2018 to 2021, you started out at $31 a ton? And
No,
by the
no.
end- Okay,
$1,913 a ton. And it went, or I'm sorry, $739 a ton. And it ramped up to $1,913 a ton.
okay.
That was
It's a little
the
number I didn't
difference,
get right.
right? And
Uh,
All right, I got it.
And you're projecting from 222 to 225, an increase of 40%, is that correct?
that is correct.
And that's the 40% of the 1,900?
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And to provide some clarity on that, a lot of that is due to the changes in the setup fees for the contractor to bring their people to the site. And these are, individual events, and the costs that they're exposed to have been going up, and they're passing those charges on to us. And we're finding more and more people are coming to our events, and they want to do the right thing. And I think of the Household Hazardous Waste Program as the most important program that we as solid waste districts, alliances, groups, and municipalities provide to our residents. I think there's, when they know that they can get rid of something that goes bump in the night in their garage, basement, or barn, and they've got a spot that they feel comfortable is going to be taken away and processed properly, they feel good about it. And the reality of how many more people are coming to our events is a real explanation of why we're being so successful at doing it. Unfortunately, by doing it, it's helping to bankrupt us effectively, because our costs keep going up, but the amount of revenue that we have isn't keeping pace. A quick example is Roundup. Over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of awareness being focused on the hazards of Roundup, and our residents see that, and they've bought some Roundup, whether it's at the hardware store, grocery store, ag supply store, and they say, wait a second, I don't want to use this. And they'll bring us full containers of it. And we take care of it. Unfortunately, we also are working with contracts that didn't necessarily anticipate these expenses ramping up as high as they have in the short period of time with our contract with the Agency of Agriculture. And what effectively is happening is we're spending all of this money that we were granted with the contract sooner than we expected. And it's a contract we can't change for a couple of years, and we still are the receiver of these wastes. So that's a concern.
Yes, thank you. Yes, one last question.
Yeah, so no doubt you're aware of the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets grants for what would surely be Roundup. Have you been having issues getting that grant money?
No, we have all of our collection, our districts, alliances, and so forth have contracts with the Agency of Agriculture that were done in 2019, but they were done predicated on costs from previous years. And it wasn't the awareness, I don't believe, of how much more it's costing now to properly manage the hazardous waste from the contractors, as well as the awareness from our residents that this stuff shouldn't be in our houses and we want to get rid of it and we want to do it right. So we're seeing a lot more stuff and a lot higher costs.
I've got that now. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, capitalism.
Yeah.
All right, okay, one more.
I just want to thank you for coming in, John. It's great to see you. Carrie Dolan here. I appreciate
Yes,
you coming
Carrie.
in. Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
All
you're
right.
welcome.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Malter.
Great.
With that, we will go to Aaron Siegrist of the Vermont Retail and Grocers Association. Welcome, Ms. Siegrist. We haven't seen you yet this session, I don't believe.
You haven't. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time. Erin Siegrist, president of the Vermont Retail and Grocers Association. Just a quick background of our membership. VRGA represents over 750 members across the state. Our membership is inclusive of a variety of business types and models, including general retail, grocery stores, convenience stores, distributors, food processors, and business service members. Of the retail and food retail members, our membership represents just under 2,000 retail outlets. So thank you for having me to talk a little bit about H115. From a general standpoint, there is an incredible amount of change happening in the marketplace. The way consumers shop has changed at lightning speed over the past 10 years, and we anticipate it will continue to change quickly into the future. VRGA cannot support H115 as presented due to a couple of different factors. Some initial concerns that I would like to raise with the committee are as follows. First, many of the products that are found on the shelves or online come from overseas. The rate of online shopping has increased twofold over the past 10 years. Early estimates show that online sales grew more than 14% in 2021, and that online market now makes up 1/5 of the total retail sales in the United States. So we feel that any proposed legislation should also apply to all online commerce and marketplaces. Marketplace facilitators should be held responsible for following state regulations and ensure that any banned products remain out of Vermont's commerce stream, or fees associated with their private label products are remitted just as manufacturers would. Additionally, I wonder what the mechanism that will collect fees or prohibit products from being shipped to individual households would look like. Without a mechanism to address the growing influx of products being sent directly to consumers, this bill places the brick and mortar retailers in Vermont at a disadvantage and places uneven burdens on the employers and taxpayers here in Vermont. Additionally, I would be curious to receive estimates of what additional costs would be added to the wholesale cost of the product due to increased costs and fees from manufacturers. This again places brick and mortar retailers at a disadvantage because retailers are no longer able to increase prices and pass the additional cost on to consumers because of easy access to the online retail marketplaces. As with any regulations in Vermont that increase cost to consumers or limit consumer access to specific products, what's the mechanism to address the lost revenue due to consumers shopping across the border? We see this issue with the bottle bill. I'm sure you all have heard quite a bit about cross-state or cross-border issues with the bottle bill. Shoppers cross the border, buy their beverages, and return the container in Vermont, further straining the financial burden of the distributors and retailers. And we anticipate that this could have a similar impact. Brand and product liability are very real. And if legislation tells a customer they can no longer have access to a product in Vermont, they have access at a single click of a button or a 1-hour car ride across the border. So those are a couple of things that we would ask you to take into consideration. Should 115 move forward, the RGA would respectfully request that the legislation clarify that retailers will only be held responsible for fees applied to the packaging of their private brands. Many large stores have brands for which they are legal owners and therefore have control over the packaging and ingredients. But if they don't own the brands or the products, they don't have control over the packaging or the ingredients in the packaging. We believe that should a stewardship organization be created, all aspects of implementation, including goal setting, packaging fee design, and revenue allocation should be managed by an industry-led, multi-stakeholder organization that includes producers, retailers, distributors, et cetera. Creation of a stewardship program with multiple lists completed and ready to file within the timeframe set forth in H115 seems a bit unrealistic, considering the number of products that are distributed into the state. So I would strongly recommend reconsidering the timeframe that is currently in H115. We also do urge the committee to hear from the Agency of Natural Resources. I think you did talk with Josh Kelly, and I'll apologize, I have not been able to hear that discussion, but I would be interested in whether this program would require an additional staff person. We believe that the stewardship program the organization should manage the program with the oversight of the agency. We think that this would ensure efficiencies at all levels of the program. And we are hearing quite a bit from state agencies, whether it's natural resources or others, that the quote cost of doing business is hitting them as well. So we would be concerned about whether they have capacity to carry the program out. As far as banned products, we don't believe that products should be banned. Again, consumers have access to all products with a click of a button or an hour's drive across the border. And even if a retailer isn't financially responsible, we are wondering what the mechanism for them to know what is covered and what is not would look like. Retailers will want to understand what products are included in this legislation. If certain products are to be banned, this places an additional burden on the retailer as well to make sure that banned products are not being delivered to their stores. I know that there is a list identified on page 4. However, a comprehensive list with actual products would be the most beneficial way to ensure that banned products are not accessible to the public. And similar to previous comments, I feel that the timeline does not provide enough time for this list to be created to ensure that everyone is in compliance. I do have one question for the committee, or I guess one question you might want to consider is what does the role of the distributor look like? So you have the manufacturer, but you also have a distributor to get the product to the retailer. Are distributors, do distributors have responsibilities within this type of a program? I didn't see language that would address that, but just clarifying whether they do have responsibility. And again, since they are not the producer, we would ask that they do not have financial responsibility for the products that they are distributing. Again, that's a question mark on what the committee reads into the legislation. Finally, we do recognize the need for cooperation and coordination among states to address the need to reduce product packaging in the end-of-life process. We believe this is an infrastructure conversation and one that we can't do alone. We can't build the system alone, and we shouldn't. We should be cooperating with surrounding states and working to address the issue on a regional basis. We all know that Congress is not going to act nationally, so we should at least be having conversations regionally to address these issues instead of having a patchwork of regulations that are very difficult for manufacturers, distributors, and retailers across the country. Again, we strongly urge the committee to consider a regional model. My understanding is that there is a group out there, they're just starting. It's the Institute for State Policy Leaders, which was created to assist state policymakers in making informed policy decisions. They are all former state representatives or senators. and the EPR programs that are popping up around the country are at the top of their target list in making efforts to bring states together to discuss regional solutions. So I would strongly encourage the committee to consider the opportunity to work with them. I'm happy, I'll stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for your testimony. Would you be able to provide it in writing, at least particularly your suggestions would be very helpful for us, but if you have the whole thing, that would be great too.
Yes, I'm happy to send it.
Thank you. Do members have questions? Not at this
That was a
time.
lot. You're happy, you're more than welcome to follow up anytime. I'm absolutely available. So
Right. Thank you. Thank you again for your testimony.
thank you for your time.
All right, members, we're going to take a 5-minute break and then shift gears one more time before we go.